Socrates rarely gave people answers. He asked questions, and somehow those questions could dismantle certainty more effectively than arguments ever could. Thousands of years later, human beings still work remarkably the same way in therapy, in leadership, in parenting, in marketing, in courtrooms, in politics, in seduction. Sometimes the person asking the question quietly controls the direction of reality itself. Human beings often resist being told what to do, what to think, but they're surprisingly willing to arrive somewhere themselves, or at least to feel that they arrived there themselves. You walk into a clothing store. A salesperson approaches too quickly. Can I help you? No thanks, I'm just looking. 30 seconds later, you suddenly wish someone would help you. And what changed? Perhaps nothing except authorship. Human beings protect autonomy fiercely, sometimes more fiercely than comfort itself. In romance, two people may later both feel that they won over the other. Almost nobody says, I was persuaded. Even in extreme existential questions, people sometimes defend the right to choose more intensely than the outcome itself. Self determination runs extraordinarily deep in human psychology. The Sophists often treated persuasion as performance, a verbal skill, rhetoric, winning. Socrates did something more psychologically dangerous. He asked questions that slowly forced people to confront contradictions inside their own thinking. A statement attacks from outside, a question reorganizes from the inside. But not all questions are the same. Some questions open people, some questions corner them. Open questions create psychological space. What do you think? How did that feel? What matters most to you here? These questions invite exploration rather than obedience. Closed questions narrow reality. Did you do it? Yes or no? Sometimes clarity matters more than openness. Then there are leading questions, questions that quietly contain a preferred direction before the person even answers. Don't you think this could have been handled differently? Some questions contain hidden assumptions inside them. The structure of the question quietly forces you to accept part of the premise simply by answering. Have you stopped beating your wife? Whether the answer is yes or no, the hidden accusation has already been accepted. When do you usually drink too much? Suddenly, the conversation is no longer about whether excessive drinking exists. The assumption has already been inserted into the frame. Questions are not neutral containers. They often define reality before the answer ever begins. Sometimes questions are searches, sometimes they're traps. There's a reason lawyers sometimes say, never ask a question you don't already know the answer to. Some questions open a person, some questions corner a person. The sentence structure may look identical. Questions do not merely gather information, they activate networks inside the mind. ask somebody, what kind of a father do you want to be? And different psychological material becomes active than if you ask, how do we solve this efficiently? Questions are attentional spotlights. Sometimes expertise is demonstrated not by answers, but by questions. In a job interview, somebody who asks deeply relevant questions about the industry, the customer, or the strategic problem may quietly signal competence more effectively than self promotion ever could. Certain questions can only be asked by somebody who genuinely understands the terrain. Jean Piaget once explored whether children could understand what the world looked like from another mountain viewpoint. Adults struggle with this too. Many people try to persuade before they truly understand the landscape of other person's mind. Good questions are often attempts to see from the other mountain. But perhaps the most important things about questions is that people are rarely asking only what they're asking. A human question usually arrives after passing through many invisible layers: an emotion, a fear, a memory, a self image, a social filter, a fantasy of how the other person might react. By the time the question finally becomes language, it may already be heavily edited. Do you think I did okay? May not really be a request for evaluation. It may be anxiety asking for safety. Are you busy tonight? May not really be about schedules at all. Why would somebody do that? May secretly mean, how could you do that to me? Human beings continuously translate inner experiences into socially survivable language. Sometimes people answer the literal sentence while completely missing the psychological reality underneath it. Communication is often not merely about answering questions. It is about sensing what kind of human experiences produce the question in the first place. Sometimes people ask questions they cannot yet consciously tolerate hearing answered. Sometimes they ask indirectly because direct language feels so dangerous. Sometimes the question itself is a compromise between truth and self protection. And sometimes the deepest questions are not solvable at all. Did I live correctly? Am I enough? What do I owe other people? Some questions cannot be answered once and for all. Perhaps they are meant to be lived rather than solved. Sometimes refusing the frame of the question is itself wisdom. Not every question deserves an answer. Sometimes questions deserve examination before answering even begins. Perhaps this was part of Socrates' genius. He understood that deepest influence does not happen when people are overpowered. It happens when something continues echoing in their mind after the conversation has ended. A contradiction, a possibility, a question. Maybe wisdom is not only learning how to answer questions, but learning how to hear the question beneath the question. including your own. And perhaps the most important questions in your life are not the ones you answer immediately, but the ones that quietly keep reorganizing you over time. So, perhaps the real question is, which questions are shaping you right now?